If you take me from my land, you leave me with no soul. I am like a tree. Everything I am is rooted in the soil, or I am just a stick to burn. I see you, my brother, in your desert shining, with your hand of gentle welcome. You're looking for my sense of humour, I wonder how you do it, carrying a heavy load. And I am proud to know you, the keeper of the stones, elder of your tribe. The truth is turning slowly, I feel it in my bones, rising on a beautiful day. Chapter 26. And I am proud to know you, the keeper of the stones. What did I learn from becoming an Arana man's mate? Initially, I got the feeling that this lad, Warren H. Williams, born at Hermansburg Aboriginal Mission, 113 kilometres southwest of Alice Springs, was quite used to having things taken care of by others. Once he cottoned on to how us whitefellas operated, it was all fine. After all, one of his grandfathers was a Scotsman, and that's where his Williams surname came from. As it turned out, Warren is a respected elder of the Hermansburg mob. He told me he was the keeper of the stones. This meant he was like his uncle's lawyer. Family structures are quite difficult to grasp out there. Traditionally, his uncle was more responsible for Warren than Warren's own father, Gus. I asked Warren to introduce me to his uncle so he could show me the stones that had been handed down for centuries. Warren said he would. So one year, when I was in Alice, he drove me many kilometres from civilization, and there was his uncle living as simply as you could imagine. His gunya was just a bit of scrap iron, just like you find around the opal mining towns. Warren asked him in language if I could see the stones. Of course, I'm not initiated into the Arana mob, so I wasn't surprised that the uncle said the stones were somewhere else at a corroboree. I worked it out after a while that Warren would never say no directly to me. He would say no in other ways. This was Arana-style good manners, I suspect, and I respect that now. In another occasion, I visited Warren at Hermansburg as part of a story for 60 Minutes with Charles Woolley. He said the best place to camp was on what he called his grandfather's country, a little further west. It was a beautiful area. You would swear that man had planted the desert oak trees, as they are spread out so evenly over the red sand dunes. I suspect each tree needs that much space to survive. I was told that the oaks are so hard that when you fell one, if you don't cut it up almost immediately, by the following day a saw will make no impression on it. They were often used to make cattle yards. We camped under a desert oak on a sand dune with Mount Sonder, known as the Sleeping Lubra to the Aranda people, in the background. Charles camped with us. The first evening we lit a campfire using ironwood and I placed a few deck chairs around. Warren and his wife joined us, but they didn't want to know about the chairs. They immediately sat on the ground. Straight away I felt like a white idiot. The red sand dunes are no different to white sandy beaches on the coast. We sit on towels and don't think anything of it. I also thought, no wonder my knees get stiff when we rely so much on chairs. I never really bend my knees much. So I joined them and pushed the deck chair aside. As the sun went down, the bush flies stopped annoying us. Warren made the comment that flies love the oak trees. Oh, thanks for telling me now, Warren. It was while we were out there on another occasion filming for Channel 7's Bush Telegraph that we managed to produce a video clip for Raining on the Rock. A young fella named Chris Tange as I now call him, was hanging around us with his fairly basic little video camera and asked would anyone mind if he filmed alongside the Bush Telegraph crew. I'd met Tange when he was sponsored by Qantas to accompany Warren to Trafalgar Studios to film the original studio recording in 1996. We set up as the sun was going down near a big rock formation on Aranda land. It was far too difficult to get permission to use Uluru. Unfortunately, there was a huge cloud bank veiling the sun, but just as the sun hit the horizon, a wonderful beam of red light smashed against us, and it was perfect. Not only did Tange put together a great clip, but it was also the start of a great mateship. He is now a very successful cinematographer with his own media production company. He lives just outside of Alice, next to the McDonnell Ranges, and is the man to contact if you need direction or footage of the amazing heart of Australia. He and his wife Annie, after many patient years trying to conceive, adopted 3 adorable children from Ethiopia, who are all siblings. They call me Uncle John. Whenever we go to Alice, we love to stay with the family. They are great lovers of this country as we are. And Tange feels the same as I do about not losing the tradition of singing its song. As part of this visit to Hermannsburg, we were shown a small workshop where the women were sitting on the ground making a kind of batik print fabric. It was obvious then that the women were the backbone of the town. They held a lot of power. My guess is that it's the women who will bring many of the Indigenous mobs forward. It reminded me of the time when I was asked to perform at Uluru at a ceremony organised by the Australia Day Council with the aim of bringing together all the cultures of Australia in the heart of the country. Steve Waugh was there to represent the contribution of sport to our nation. There was a representative of the Afghans in recognition of their significant assistance in building the original railway line for the Ghan, plus representatives from several Aboriginal tribes. A wonderful fella from the local mob sang Waltzing Matilda in his language. Warren and I performed Raining on the Rock together. As the ceremony progressed, I noticed Warren standing up the back of the audience and asked him why. He replied, "You don't stand in front of the women." Hermannsburg was a bit of a shock when I first went out there. The beautiful little whitewashed Lutheran church was a delight, as were the grounds around it. But the town had plastic shopping bags floating around in the hot breeze that caught on every fence and bush. Alcohol is prohibited, but the inevitable Coke cans were everywhere. My mate Ted Egan said to me once that the mob always threw things on the ground after using them, and it didn't matter. That was when wood, stone or bones belonged to their landscape. The night we stayed in the town, they put us up in a 2-storey unit. The 3-metre fence surrounded the building and the gate was locked. This was to keep the petrol sniffers from stealing our petrol. Even though our vehicle ran on diesel, Gus Williams, Warren's dad, thought it best. It was an honour to get to know Gus. What a warm and highly respected personality he was. He knocked on our door that night, and all of a sudden I realised I had a cylinder on the table with Black Label Scotch printed on it. I never got around to explaining that it was full of cutlery. Gus was from the Slim Dusty period and had become quite a country music singer himself, and he gave me an album of his to listen to. I often wondered what he thought about Warren's success. I like to think he appreciated the opportunities I created for his son. I ran into Gus again at the Drovers Camp at Camberwell. Each year, the Drovers Camp Festival celebrates the life of stockmen and women. Horse riding events are held. It's a different world out there. Legends come and go unnoticed by most Australians. But these men and women are dedicated to the art of being good cattlemen and women. It was big country stuff. I felt a little out of place, but at least being from the land, I have bred a few cattle and sheep and could also sing some songs that they related to. I remember giving Gus a big hug that night and telling him I loved him, which I did. He had a genuine warmth that was handed on to his son. When Gus passed, the Western Arana mob lost a great elder. One of the most interesting things I learned about Indigenous people from Warren was when we were in Kakadu. Warren quite obviously felt out of place. He told me that the Kakadu mob were complete foreigners to Arana people, so he was quite uncomfortable, almost embarrassed to be there. But he wouldn't have said, "I don't want to go there." Ever since that day, I have realised that we are really ignorant to consider Aborigines as one mob or to put them in the same box. It would be like putting the Germans and French in the same bag. Even Warren's mob and the mob west of Hermannsburg are still enemies. There is a deep-seated antagonism between them that stems back hundreds of years, according to Warren. In Alice Springs, which is central Aranda, there is ongoing strife at the pubs, mainly because of the mobs other than Aranda coming into town. Pitjantjatjara, for instance, come from further south. Actually, it's all too complicated for me, but there are people who study it and know why different skins don't mix. One day, I walked 6 kilometres from the caravan park at Kings Canyon, about 2.5-hour drive southwest of Hermannsburg, across the plain. I came across a clay pan and thought, what an ideal place to sit for kids to run around. It was the perfect place for an Indigenous picnic. I really felt a strong urge that something would turn up, and sure enough it did. I trod on a perfect round grindstone shaped like a flying saucer, actually buried in the sand. Either I was in contact with the old people, or there is that much stuff out there that I was bound to step on it. One thing is for sure, the more respect we show to the wise ones amongst Indigenous groups, the better off Australia will be. When you think of at least 40,000 years of survival, there would be some great wisdom handed down. It could be very useful information for all Australians. We have capitalised on their art, why not their wisdom? Yes, I'll be going waltzing Matilda. I'll travel up the road to Gundagai. But I'll be steering clear of that pub with no beer when I'm travelling this big country round. Oh, there's red rock and dust in this land of romance where the riverbanks will bust without warning. And I had to leave my girl on the shores of the ocean to travel this big country round. Now you may call me a jolly swagman, but I don't regret a thing I've done. So click go the shears and I'll be gone for years, travelling this big country round. Oh, this land is so big and so lonely, but a man can get away from it all. So untie that kangaroo, he won't catch old man Emu, for he's travelling this big country round.